My cheating wife thought I'd fold, but I won in court, sold our home, took revenge, then vanished. Be prepared served as the Boy Scouts' motto. The Scout Code varied, outlining that a Boy Scout should embody traits like reliability, loyalty, helpfulness, friendliness, politeness, kindness, obedience, cheerfulness, thriftiness, bravery, cleanliness, and respectfulness. Surprisingly, it also mentioned naivety, apparent stupidity, idiocy, and trust. Nick had no alternative explanations. Typically, after checking his wife's iPhone email, he refrained from further exploration, a habit she knew well, thus foregoing extra security measures. Being a Boy Scout, he respected others' privacy. However, with Nick's wife departing in a few weeks, he struggled to recall her hotel's name despite her prior mention. Hoping to avoid arguments about his inattentiveness, which had become more frequent, he noted their impending separation would be their longest since their wedding 5 years ago. Nick contemplated a romantic gesture, like sending flowers to express his affection while she was thousands of miles away in the city of love, Paris. Yet, he knew her affections in Paris would be for Dwayne, her companion on the trip. Upon entering his wife's phone password, their wedding date, Nick found himself perusing one of the non-work-related emails exchanged between Linda and Dwayne over recent weeks. They discussed romantic activities in Paris, including strolls along the Champs-Élysées, moonlit boat rides on the Seine, and passionate nights. Almost as startling as the affair itself was the fact that Linda and Dwayne exchanged messages using their work email accounts. They both should have exercised better judgment. Like Nick, Linda was a lawyer, and Dwayne was a paralegal at her firm. All three had extensive experience in document analysis for major litigation cases, where teams of lawyers and paralegals comb through hundreds of thousands of emails for discovery proceedings. Typically, the narrative revolved around one or two individuals engaging in affairs, prompting lawyers to assess any impact on the case and strategize damage control. The truth was, Nick's lack of attention when Linda mentioned the trip and hotel name stemmed from a sense of something amiss, honed by his legal experience in detecting deception. He couldn't pinpoint it then, but his instinct signaled trouble. 5 years as a lawyer, listening to clients and colleagues, had sharpened his perception. Something felt off when Linda first mentioned the trip. The arbitration process ahead promised to be dreadfully dull, leaving no time to enjoy the sights of Paris. She mentioned this casually, without even looking at him, and it felt too dismissive. Knowing Paris held a special place in Nick's heart, they often discussed visiting together since Linda had never been. Nick found her response odd, but he didn't anticipate such a dire situation. The email he was now reading felt like a sharp blow to his heart. Dwayne's message from the previous night suggested removing Nick to spend more time together without worry. Linda replied, stating she felt safe with Nick but admitted to enjoying secret moments with Dwayne. This revelation stung. Nick felt uncertain about his next steps, aside from forwarding all correspondence to himself and printing out the email exchange as evidence, just in case. As an experienced lawyer, his first instinct was to preserve evidence. After securing the emails, Nick began to contemplate his options. He knew he needed to think carefully before taking any action. This analytical approach was what defined him as a lawyer. He was paid for his intellect, not his physical strength. With Linda out for a run and expected back soon, he had limited time to make decisions. Before he could consider his next move, he needed to complete the task of finding a hotel. However, this wasn't for sending flowers. He didn't understand why he needed this information, but he knew it was necessary, perhaps to be near the Eiffel Tower, close to the International Chamber of Commerce where Linda and Dwayne would be working on their arbitration case. Once he located a suitable hotel, Nick quickly conducted a search on Virginia divorce law. While he remembered some details from the bar exam, he wanted to double-check. Infidelity was grounds for divorce and could impact issues such as alimony and property division, but there were nuances to consider. One defense was if Linda discovered the infidelity and then resumed carnal relations voluntarily. Nick needed to leave the house quickly, avoiding confrontation for now, intending to confront Linda later with a carefully crafted response. He resolved to take control of the situation for the remainder of their marriage, even if it meant acting against the principles of the Boy Scouts. In wartime, as Churchill famously said, truth must be protected by a bodyguard of lies. Nick's lies would serve a greater purpose now, especially since none of them were under oath. He headed to the master bedroom, beginning to pack swiftly. Finishing promptly, he placed his suitcases near the front door. He nearly completed gathering vital documents, bank and credit card statements, 401k and IRA statements, car titles, pay stubs, mortgage, and Linda's recent student loan balance. As he emerged from his basement office, he heard her in the kitchen, deciding to appear worn out and disheveled when facing his wife. With her shoulder-length brown hair pulled back into a ponytail, she looked attractive, though he found her repulsive. In his view, love was already dead. "I'll be going to Paris," he announced with a grim smile. Linda's face drained of color, her blue eyes losing their brightness. "What? Paris, Virginia?" Her initial shock faded quickly. "Sven is called," Nick explained. "We're needed for an insurance case and we need to prep a witness. We lost the motion to compel and the judge is furious, throwing the investigation timeline into chaos. I'll be on the road for a few weeks, though I might drop by occasionally." "Poor thing," Linda replied with a fitting expression of concern. "Maybe your company is hiring. I'd rather join you in Paris," Nick countered, noting concern flicker across her face again, but then she grinned. "Send me your resume. Maybe you have the right experience for us to consider." It was a jest. Linda's law firm ranked higher than Nick's. Perhaps with some guilt, she moved as if to hug him, but Nick retreated to his office before she could close the gap. Visions of striking her resurfaced, and he wasn't sure he could keep them at bay. Heading back upstairs, Linda inquired about his dinner preference. "I won't be able to stay. I'll grab something on my way out. Sven urgently needs me to hit the road," he said, bustling around the kitchen. Linda followed him to the door, a hint of concern in her expression. As he grabbed his suitcases and headed out, she leaned in for a goodbye kiss. "Apologies, I think I may have caught a cold this morning. My throat feels sore. It could be allergies, but I don't want you to catch anything." Linda trailed him to the car as he loaded it. "When can I expect you back?" "Probably not until Friday. We're heading to Roanoke after Paris, then the following week we're off to Baltimore." Perhaps growing more paranoid, he thought he could discern the gears turning in her mind as he watched her avert her gaze, as though contemplating how his absence might present unexpected opportunities for her. Waving goodbye, he reversed out of the driveway. He hoped she would simply assume that he was preoccupied with work and irritated by the Saturday call. His acting skills were already stretched thin, but he suspected she was already plotting to invite Dwayne over. Nick drove until he reached a nearby shopping center with a coffee shop. Like many lawyers, he found clarity in putting thoughts to paper. As he finished his coffee, he began jotting down a list of tasks. Pausing for a moment, he realized he had never entertained the idea of reconciliation. That wasn't even on the table. Only retribution was. The question was to what extent. The ringing of his phone interrupted him. Not recognizing the number, he answered impatiently. "Yes?" he said. "Mr. Buford, I'm Sam Granger. Though we haven't met, I'll be direct. I found your number online. I specialize in buying old houses and replacing them with mansions. I understand it's controversial, but people tend to soften when presented with a check." Granger spoke rapidly, leaving Nick little time to react, except to note that the house wasn't old, it was cozy. "I'd like to purchase your house to demolish it," Granger continued. "While I'd suggest a shopping center, construction timelines, especially with county permits, are unpredictable. I make my profit by closing deals fast, and I believe I can offer you a very favorable price if you and your wife are interested in selling." Nick struggled to suppress a grin reminiscent of the Grinch's. Linda had picked out their home shortly before their wedding. Although an aged ranch, it boasted a charming yard bordering a wooded area with a babbling creek. Despite its proximity to major highways, it offered seclusion and tranquility. What truly sold her was the treehouse in the yard opposite the master bedroom window, envisioning it as an ideal space for children. Meanwhile, Nick was drawn to its affordability and the fact that it was only a 20-minute drive from the main subway parking lot, coupled with a 30-minute train ride to work, making the move to the area highly convenient. "Mr. Granger, I'll be absent for the next few days, so access to the property may not be guaranteed. Call me Sam. I don't require an interior inspection. As mentioned, it's a wreck, and I've already surveyed the exterior. Can we meet Sunday morning?" "Certainly. I'll likely finalize the deal using my wife's power of attorney due to her busy work schedule." "No problem. I'll provide you with the necessary paperwork." Nick made a note of the address and started to envision the plan taking shape. Did Linda feel secure with her Boy Scout? Little did she know that Lord Baden-Powell's scouting principles, stealth, cunning, and self-confidence, served as the basis for his Boy Scout movement, skills akin to military intelligence tactics, including ambushes. She wouldn't anticipate what unfolded until it was too late. But first, reconnaissance. To start, he set his empty coffee cup on the table and headed to the car for privacy, dialing a number. "Frank?" he asked when the call was picked up. Frank Berry worked as a private detective. During his 5 years in corporate legal work, Nick also made it a priority to do pro bono work to assist disadvantaged individuals with their legal issues. This aligned with his beliefs about leading a meaningful life and provided him with courtroom experience that his regular job typically didn't offer. One of his law school peers suggested that Frank assist with a contentious divorce case involving a stepfather accused of carnally abusing his stepdaughter. Frank's evidence led to the man's release when the police's lackluster response failed, expediting the divorce process. As Nick briefed Frank on what he had uncovered, he queried, "You think your wife will bring him to our bed tonight? Is she truly that arrogant?" "She's become incredibly arrogant. A standout in her law school class. She believes she's infallible. I'll handle it myself. I owe you for your help. The Rivera divorce case brought me significant positive attention." "My phone hasn't stopped ringing, thanks," Frank said. "Oh, and there's a treehouse in the backyard that you might find useful. Its windows directly face the master bedroom, and she tends to keep the curtains open. It used to bother me, but I've learned to accept whatever arouses her. You can access it by crossing the forest and jumping over the stream after dark. There are no fences or dogs around. A service road on the other side offers parking. Thank you. If it's okay, I plan to conceal a camera outdoors, aiming it at the front of the house to monitor arrivals and departures." "Excellent. And you're engaging for a divorce, correct? You're seeking a divorce?" "Yes and yes." "All right. I know Harry's fondness for affidavits in the reporting process. If you're correct, we'll discover the truth soon." Next, Nick phoned Harry. "Is this regarding the law school reunion, Nick? I've already received 5 calls about contributing to their fund. No, I need to retain your services. Linda's been unfaithful, and I want to pursue legal action." After briefing him, Harry replied, "Come by tomorrow. Although it's Sunday, I still need to handle some paperwork at the office. We might as well proceed. It seems you've acknowledged that infidelity cannot be tolerated. Frank has already gathered compelling evidence of the affair. The challenge will be negotiating a fair financial settlement. She's also a lawyer at a prominent firm, so she'll have the means to contest and delay." "Leave it to me," Nick said. "I believe we can resolve this in a civilized manner. So you're not planning to go all out against her? Understood. Let's see what you propose." His final call required finesse. "Hello, Maggie, it's Nick." The silence on the other end was profound. "Maggie, it's good to hear from you too, honey. After all these years, what's on your mind, Nick?" "After all this time, I need your assistance." "I thought Linda was your assistant." "It's about Linda. She's been up to no good." "What a shock. I find it hard to believe, foolish. Have you noticed that all of this is encapsulated in quotation marks? I can't offer you emotional or carnal support. Lately, I'm seeing someone else now, and I'm sure he's content. Look, I truly apologize. I regret that our indiscretions tainted our friendship. I also regret allowing Linda to push you out of my life when there was a chance for us to reconcile. But now I need your supportive assistance." "What do you need, Nick?" he informed her. There was a pause on the line, followed by laughter. "I'm in," she said once she had composed herself, though he could still sense the grin in her voice. "You always knew how to make me laugh." "Thank you, Maggie. Once things settle down, you'll have to introduce me to Mr. Lucky so I can commend him on his excellent choice and invite you both to dinner." "Consider it arranged," she replied. He required a place to lay low for a while and strategize. Thus, he booked a room at an extended stay hotel outside the Beltway in Fairfax, distant enough from his and Linda's usual hangouts to avoid detection. After settling in, he went out to grab a bite to eat. Although he wasn't particularly hungry, he knew he needed sustenance in his stomach to handle the drinks he intended to consume. Across the street from the hotel stood a restaurant named El Mariachi. As the hostess seated him in a booth, he noticed the bartender glancing in his direction. The bartender seemed vaguely familiar, but Nick dismissed the thought. At present, he had ample reasons to be concerned. The menu suggested that the restaurant masqueraded as Mexican cuisine. Many Americans couldn't discern the distinction. He opted for budget-friendly tequila with the meal, anticipating a harsh hangover the next day, considering the discomfort part of the purging process. The waitress returned with a bottle of premium tequila from the top shelf. Catching Nick's gaze, she gestured to the bartender, who nodded in acknowledgement. Nick reciprocated the gesture and poured himself a generous drink. As the bartender resumed tending to other patrons, it took a moment for Nick to recall his identity. He remembered him as one of the spectators at Rivera's divorce trial and the subsequent criminal proceedings, always seated alone in the back row. One day his client's daughter, Sonia, hugged him, But when Nick inquired about the man, Sonia grew silent, insisting he was just a family friend. Nick dined quietly, jotting notes on a notepad and sipping tequila. After the waitress cleared his table, he visited the restroom, feeling the surroundings sway as if he were aboard a ship. Leaning against the wall for support, he returned to his booth, attempting to maintain composure, only to find the bartender seated across from him. "Senor Nick, good to see you," he greeted, clasping Nick's hand and shaking it vigorously. Nick settled in, awaiting his words. "I never properly thanked you for helping my cousin deal with that scoundrel she was wedded to." Nick tried to downplay his role, but the bartender brushed it off. "He was severely injured in prison. Were you aware? They fear he may never walk or eat solid food again." The bartender's slight smile sent a shiver down Nick's spine. "I didn't catch that," Nick remarked. The bartender shrugged. "Yesterday's news. What brings you to El Mariachi solo on a Saturday night? Where's your lovely wife?" Nick met the bartender's gaze. The bartender maintained a smile, not mocking, but knowing Nick wondered why he posed such an odd question. How did he even know Nick was married? Then Nick recalled Linda's surprise visit to one of the hearings, where she kissed him afterward. The bartender must have still been in the courtroom. "We're dealing with some issues regarding her," Nick admitted. He saw no need to fabricate or conceal details, such as her involvement with someone else. Again, he was met with the bartender's knowing smile. Nick was taken aback and fell silent. "I'm no lawyer, Don Nicholas, but I know that if you want to keep a secret, you shouldn't write it down and leave the paper lying around," the bartender remarked, gesturing to Nick's notebook. It detailed aspects of infidelity, depicted drawings of Dwayne's hypothetical demise, featured the name Linda encircled with a slash, and included a to-do list with the phrase "burn the exploitive." Nick shrugged. Poor operational security, but at least it didn't expose any sensitive customer data. Any man in your predicament should ponder his desires. What do you truly desire, Senor Nick, apart from wealth? What would be your ultimate vengeance? Nick didn't hesitate. "I want to punch her nose so hard it shatters, and I want to strike her face until both her eyes blacken. She has a stunning face and expressive eyes. I want to obliterate them." The bartender's grin widened, followed by a chuckle and a shake of his head. "My friend, your thinking isn't rational. Those who seek revenge so viciously often end up behind bars. You wouldn't want that, unless of course it happens while you're visiting your clients, right?" He paused, casting a sly glance at Nick, who nodded. "But perhaps I can assist you with something. You aided my cousin with her predicament. She could have sought my help, but for various reasons she declined, yet you stepped in and handled it." Nick attempted to interject. Yes, he enlisted Frank to gather evidence, but he left the police to do the legwork. Nick also enlisted a partner from his firm, a former assistant United States attorney, to diplomatically liaise with a prosecutor to ensure proper handling of the criminal case. Nick accompanied his client. To ensure she received due respect from the prosecutor, the divorce itself was standard procedure following her husband's conviction. The bartender waved off his objections. "You must recognize that aiding everyday people like my cousin is commendable. On behalf of my family, I am indebted to you. I always repay my debts. I believe you could use some assistance." Nick studied him intently. "I'm afraid I don't recall your name." The bartender's smile morphed into a shark-like grin. "Some folks call me El Diablo, devil." He nodded. "That's what those who dislike me call me. To my friends, I'm Jose Garcia." Now it was Nick's moment to grin. "What must I do to earn a favor from the devil? Trade my soul?" El Diablo's grin faded. Nick's expression turned serious. "Let's be real. You're a lawyer. You don't have a soul." His grin returned, signaling a jest. "Consider it professional courtesy, Senor Nick. Now, just provide me with your address, your wife's name, and her daily routine, or what's your plan? I have a few ideas, but ever heard the saying, ignorance is bliss? I think you need to remain blissfully unaware and keep track of your whereabouts over the coming months. Get yourself a disposable phone so we can stay connected. Leave the number here at the bar, and after that, steer clear of this place. It's for the best." Nick briefed El Diablo on hiring a private investigator, his intention to stay put until Linda jetted off to France, and her travel schedule. El Diablo recognized the hotel in Paris, but kept its source under wraps. "Just one query, Senor Nick. Is there any hope for reconciliation, forgiveness, mercy? I don't want to hear I've had a change of heart later on." El Diablo met his gaze squarely, the grin vanished, his demeanor turned grave. Nick held his gaze, took a deep breath, and paused to rein in his emotions. The path ahead was clear. He was a man of simple values, prioritizing trust and loyalty above all else. They had left his marriage. Linda had flicked a switch in his mind, swapping love for loathing. With time and reflection, he knew he'd eventually become indifferent, but that time hadn't arrived yet. No one. El Diablo eased.
All right, don't stress about a thing.
The waitress delivered the bill. El Diablo waved her off but permitted Nick to tip generously. He also allowed Nick to take a bottle of tequila but cautioned him to pace himself. A clear mind was essential for the upcoming battle. Somehow, Nick woke up on Sunday morning at a reasonable hour with a minimal hangover. He reached Harry's law office at 10 in the morning and found Frank already present. "Apologies, Nick," Frank said. "She definitely had relations with that guy in your bed. He was there 2 hours after you called me and was still present when I departed this morning. We received high-quality footage. I've made you a copy, but you might not want to view it." Harry interjected. "You probably shouldn't." "Don't worry," Nick replied, accepting the DVD from Frank. "Give me the summary." Frank continued. "I climbed into that treehouse just like you instructed, and they were all over each other. I captured clear shots of their faces and, frankly, their entire bodies. It was evident they were engaging in relations. Nonetheless, it seems to be merely physical. They hardly conversed. I'm uncertain if this alters your plans." "No." "For how long?" Nick inquired. They both had remarkable stamina. "Thank you. This only makes me feel worse. Apologies. Anyway, I'm personally acquainted with Linda from your party last year, so I can identify her. We ran a check on this guy's license plates. They belong to Dwayne Martin. We know he's colluding with her. The duration of their involvement remains unclear, but it appears to be compelling evidence. Oh, and we've installed a camera in a nearby tree overlooking the driveway and garage, allowing us to monitor their comings and goings. I'll send you a remote link to the live stream on our secure server. I've discussed this with Harry and will draft a report and supporting affidavit for him to file. Once again, my apologies, dude." Frank exchanged handshakes with Harry and Nick before departing the office. "So, what's the plan?" inquired Harry. "We're filing for divorce on grounds of infidelity, but I don't want to serve her yet," Nick explained. Harry regarded Nick stoically. "Trust me, Harry, those words make my stomach churn. I don't want any foolish moves. I have a feeling things will go smoother than you think," Nick reassured. Harry winced. "Just file this on Monday afternoon before the court office closes. Give me the case number and I'll handle the rest. But remember, Nick, I'm not versed in criminal law." "Noted. And if you find yourself in trouble, I can't bail you out. You might be pleasantly surprised," Nick quipped as he exited. His next destination was a meeting with Sam Granger. It proved highly productive, as Nick discovered they could sell the house for over $100,000 more than the mortgage without real estate agent fees. Linda would be thrilled if she knew. Nick pledged to return promptly with the necessary paperwork to seal the deal. As Nick left Sam's office, he glanced at his phone. No messages or calls. She must still be occupied with Dwayne. Nick seized the moment to call his boss, Sven, and inform him of his urgent need for 2 weeks of vacation, or he would resign. Sven, in a panic, relented, recognizing Nick's vital role in current affairs and their temporary business slowdown. With his plan set in motion, Nick returned to his hotel to tend to his ongoing tasks. By Monday evening, everything was prepared. Linda had left voicemails on Sunday and Monday evenings, to which he chose not to respond, reserving his energy for Tuesday morning. Frank's camera, positioned outside the house, had provided Nick with insights. Dwayne had spent Monday night there, and based on his prior stay from Sunday evening to Monday morning, he would likely depart around 8 in the morning for work, just before Linda left around 8:30 in the morning. At 7 sharp, Nick strolled through the front door and exclaimed, "Darling, I'm home!" A sudden noise from upstairs caught his attention, and shortly after, Linda descended the stairs in her robe, appearing disheveled and startled. "Honey, what a surprise," she said, attempting to feign cheerfulness but struggling to conceal her unease, on the brink of panic. "I thought you wouldn't be here until Friday. You didn't answer my calls." "Apologies," Nick replied cheerfully. "You know how it goes." He pretended not to notice the 2 glasses of wine left in the living room as he made his way to the dining room. Linda lingered in the doorway, pondering her next move and how to prevent him from ascending the stairs, where Dwayne was likely hiding. A knock at the door startled her. "Could you get that, honey?" Nick requested meanwhile, busying himself arranging papers on the dining room table, feigning obliviousness. As Linda squared her shoulders and went to answer the door, possibly anticipating the arrival of a bailiff with divorce papers, to her surprise, it was Maggie who entered unannounced, simply greeting them. Linda observed with intrigue, as Maggie took a seat at the dining table and opened her suitcase. Apologies, honey, Nick began, but I'm uncertain when my next on-air appearance will be. And you know I can't imagine you embarking on a foreign trip without updating your powers of attorney. Just as a precaution in case any financial or medical emergencies arise. Oh, and I had a couple of moments over the weekend and received a tip about refinancing my mortgage at a fantastic rate. Since we'll both be traveling, I thought now would be the opportune time to handle it. I apologize for the urgency, he added, attempting to convey his remorse. Who's this? Linda inquired, gesturing toward Maggie once the pulsing in her temples had subsided. This is Maggie, Nick clarified. Linda's visage relaxed. Maggie is a notary, Nick elaborated. You're my Boy Scout, always prepared, she remarked with a grin, though her eyes remained cautious. It's just my nature, honey, he said, handing Linda a pen and arranging the papers in front of her. The flags with arrows indicate where to sign. Feel free to review the documents if you wish. I trust you, Linda replied with a broad smile, promptly signing all the papers before her. Nick silently prayed that she would comply, as his fate depended on it. But as they say, fortune favors the bold. As Linda signed each document, Nick passed them to Maggie, who notarized them. Mrs. Buford, do you have a photo ID? Maggie inquired. Linda rose from the table to retrieve her purse. A brief exchange of glances occurred between Maggie and Nick, both struggling to suppress laughter. Linda placed her driver's license on the table. Maggie snapped a photo with her phone and recorded the details in her notary journal. Linda offered coffee, but both Nick and Maggie politely declined. As Maggie finalized the certification of the documents in her ledger, and Nick organized everything into separate folders, Linda's gaze remained expectant, anticipating Nick's next move, strategizing her next steps. Maggie departed, tidying up her belongings and offering Nick a smile when Linda's attention was elsewhere. Seizing the moment, Nick informed Linda that he had a conference call to conduct and retreated to his basement office to do so. Linda visibly relaxed, knowing she now had time to discreetly escort Dwayne out and erase any trace of him before Nick surfaced from his sanctuary. Nick descended to the basement, allowing Linda to maintain the illusion that she was still deceiving him, pretending not to hear the heavy footsteps retreating up the stairs as Dwayne made his escape or the garage door opening for Dwayne's departure. Nick continued with his charade. However, upon hearing the shower running in the master bathroom, Nick swiftly gathered his belongings, exited through the basement door, and drove off in silence, leaving his unsuspecting wife behind. 2 hours later, after a hearty breakfast at the diner, Nick found himself in Harry's office. Harry appeared taken aback. So, you're saying you had your wife sign Form CC-116, confirming the divorce filing and relinquishing future service of process and notice of any proceedings? That's correct. The properly certified form is right here, and you're also telling me that you coerced your wife, a seasoned lawyer, into signing a property settlement agreement transferring all proceeds from the sale of your home and its contents, along with cars and jewelry she owns, granting you full control over her personal belongings and allowing both of you to retain your respective retirement accounts with no alimony from you to her, despite her higher income? Indeed. She always displayed a very generous demeanor. Harry scrutinized Nick and redirected his focus to the papers on his desk. And you also procured her signature on an affidavit wherein she confesses to infidelity, acknowledging her lover's presence in the marital bedroom at the time of signing, following a night of closeness the previous evening? Are you suggesting this in her affidavit genuinely supports this account? According to the email, she mentions staying with her lover due to his proficiency. Is this the narrative you wish to present, counselor? Nick maintained a neutral expression, struggling to contain his emotions. Let's refrain from insults. The documents are self-explanatory. Harry glanced at the papers, then at Nick, almost smiling before suppressing it and swiveling in his chair. Damn it, I'll accept the case. You're a respected member of the bar and an old friend from law school. How was I to know you orchestrated all this? I thought it was legitimate. Your Honor, I'm utterly bewildered. I was blindsided by my client's breach of trust. If anyone's license should be revoked, it's Nicholas Ab Buford's. Your Honor, do you see my stance on this, Nick? I'll pursue it to the bitter end if need be. Will the notary affirm Linda's signature on these documents? Yes, she will. Can she testify to Linda's careful review of the papers? I wouldn't wish to preempt or sway any testimony, but given Linda's legal expertise, I trust she scrutinized the documents diligently. I'm confident the notary will attest to witnessing Linda Buford review and sign each document. As for her comprehension of their contents, I cannot offer an opinion. All right then, said Harry. I'll process all this today, along with Frank's affidavit and report, complete with photos and a DVD. I'll attempt to remove it from the electronic record temporarily. We don't want this to remain in the public eye, do we? No, replied Nick. Linda is departing for Paris in just over 2 weeks. The longer we keep it concealed, the better. Do you have any connections in district court? Remember Seth? Asked Harry. He was a student a year junior to us, struggling to secure a position at a law firm. He's now serving as a law clerk in district court to bolster his resume. He could expedite the process, but if the judge insists on live testimony, it could jeopardize everything. Linda must decide not to contest this for some reason. Should she become aware, it could take a turn for the worse. I may need to resign as your attorney. Fair enough. Someday you can fill me in on the whole ordeal, but not now. Over the subsequent 2 weeks, Nick kept Linda at a distance. He sent her texts at regular intervals, citing his busy schedule, and only sporadically answered her calls. As time passed, her calls dwindled. You've spooked her, Frank informed him by week's end. According to our surveillance footage, Dwayne hasn't been at the house since you surprised them on Tuesday morning. I can't ascertain if they rendezvoused at his place during the week or engaged in their activities at the office, but it's evident they're avoiding home. I'll keep you posted if anything changes. The only alteration was Nick's discreet return to the house upon learning Linda had departed, to gather the financial documents he deemed necessary. He also finalized a contract with Sam Granger to sell the house, with the sale set to close during Linda's initial week in France. During evenings, Nick frequented the gym, read in his spare time, and pondered how he ended up with such a chaotic life at 30. He informed Sven of his need for a few more weeks of rest, to which Sven reluctantly agreed. She's back to enjoying herself with him in the house, Frank informed him on Saturday, a week before Linda's Paris trip. Thanks for the heads up, Nick replied, though indifferent. He knew he'd rather incinerate the sheets than sell them when he abandoned the house. By then, Nick had already viewed the video Frank provided, revealing Dwayne's allure. Dwayne, a few years younger, was a gym regular known for pre-weight training mirror rituals, otherwise unremarkable. Dwayne embodied a superficial ideal Nick could have done without. Before he knew it, Linda embarked on her long-awaited Paris trip. One of Frank's associates shadowed her to the airport, waiting until her departure for Europe. Upon receiving the news, Nick entered the house, consolidated Linda's clothes in the living room, and packed his belongings. The next day, movers boxed Linda's clothing and sent it to storage while Nick's possessions were moved to the apartment he secured with Sam Granger's assistance, a proficient house liquidator. Nick easily sold the furniture. Once the house was emptied, Nick took a final stroll before executing his ultimate task. He meticulously gathered the wedding photographs, album, and Linda's wedding dress, placing them in the patio fire pit beneath the treehouse. After adding lighter fluid and igniting a match, he watched as the memories turned to ashes. After the blaze, Nick was satisfied to find that the video captured ample detail. Each photo added to the pit depicted vivid memories of their time together. The following day, Nick finalized the sale of their family home using his wife's power of attorney, which she should have reviewed. With a separate financial power of attorney, Nick managed to deposit the sale proceeds, access his personal account acting on behalf of his wife, and close joint accounts. 3 days later, however, during Linda's initial week in France, a construction crew demolished the house, clearing debris swiftly before commencing site preparation. Unfortunately, the tree, once a playground favorite for children, had to be removed. A gazebo now stood in its place. Regrettably, construction halted abruptly as the cherished home site transitioned into an empty square of land. It appeared there were issues with the permitting process. Nick and a law school friend employed in the county permitting department were confident the issue would resolve upon Linda's return from France, once the appropriate forms were received and approved. Throughout this period, Nick ignored all attempts at communication from Linda: calls, texts, emails, and voicemails. Despite outreach from her friends and relatives, Nick replied swiftly, informing them he was occupied and traveling, primarily to deter them from driving by the house and encountering him. El Diablo reached out on Nick's prepaid cell phone mentioning that Linda and Dwayne appeared strained and unhealthy, hinting at possible suspicions. When Nick inquired how he obtained this information, El Diablo simply stated his wide network of connections, even across Europe. He then proposed returning Linda's wedding and engagement rings, to which Nick declined. El Diablo asked if someone else could purchase them, to which Nick adamantly refused but eventually relented, suggesting he might know a potential buyer. 2 days before Linda's scheduled return from Paris, Nick found himself in Harry's office. I have no idea how this happened, but here's the divorce decree. It's much quicker than usual for such cases, Harry remarked, with Seth remaining silent. I don't inquire or speculate. Consider yourself fortunate and celebrate your newfound single status. Here's the copy I'll be sending to your ex-wife. I'm sure she'll be pleased. As Nick approached his car outside Harry's office, an unfamiliar number rang his phone. However, upon answering, he recognized El Diablo's voice. Nick, you should take a vacation immediately. Go somewhere crowded where people know you and can vouch for your presence. With that, El Diablo disconnected the call. Nick realized it had been ages since he saw his college friends in New York. Fortunately, his schedule was open for the next few days, so he embarked on a trip the same day. He visited several exhibitions, explored numerous museums, and socialized over lunches, coffees, and dinners with different groups of friends, covering most expenses with his credit card. He also tipped generously at his hotel to ensure recognition from all the staff. While there, he express-mailed a DVD copy depicting him burning Linda's wedding dress and album to her parents' house. Late Sunday evening, after savoring coffee and pastries in Little Italy in Manhattan, Nick's phone rang. It was his father-in-law. Nick, where are you? Linda is in a frenzy. She's in the hospital. Yes? What's the matter? This was becoming intriguing. She returned from her trip on Friday, but she and her colleague were apparently abducted from the airport. They emerged this morning, both under the influence of medications. Her colleague was severely beaten, and Linda, his father-in-law's voice faltered. What about Linda? She woke up covered in tattoos from head to toe, tattoos with dreadful inscriptions. And as soon as she woke and saw this, a masked man entered and struck her nose, breaking it, then inflicted 2 black eyes with 2 more blows. Impressive, Nick pondered. It was the perfect ending. He wouldn't mind if Linda realized his betrayal, just as she betrayed him in their marriage. It would be worth a soul if he possessed one. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm out of town presently. What do you need me to do? Nick sensed surprise on the other end of the line. You're her husband. She's your wife. Not anymore. We divorced. The court finalized it last week. She's been cheating on me with the man she's traveling with. What? How? Here's what's unclear. Nick knew he was being excessively cruel now, but he didn't care. I have a video. I can send you a copy of her engaging in bed acts, not with me, if you'd like to know. Silence followed on the other end. Nick wondered if his father-in-law had suffered a heart attack. We're done with her, so you'll have to bring her home. She's not my responsibility now. You did it, his father-in-law exclaimed. I've been in New York since Wednesday, celebrating my divorce. Look, I understand you're upset, and I hope Linda recovers soon. But I don't think we have anything else to say to each other. He ended the call. At that instant, Nick realized the urban stress had become overwhelming. He emailed Sven, bluntly stating that he and the firm could go to hell, respectfully. A quick online search revealed an REI store in Soho, prompting Nick to equip himself with new hiking and camping gear. Since Linda never enjoyed hiking, this was an opportunity for Nick to reconnect with his intelligence background. The hotel kindly stored his luggage for a reasonable fee, allowing him to venture into the Adirondack Mountains to immerse himself in nature until things settled down. Fortunately, he had his passport in case he decided to visit Canada. As it turned out, he did. For the next 8 weeks, Nick mostly ignored his phone. Initially, the barrage of messages resembling frantic screams and tears made it seem like someone had hijacked his ex-wife's phone. Unable to sift through them all, he listened to only a couple before deleting the rest, along with numerous bizarre emails. Clearly, her account must have been compromised. Finding time to read through it all seemed impossible. Nick hoped the troubled woman behind the messages would seek the help she urgently needed. 8 weeks later, Nick met Frank and Harry for drinks. Just to clarify, Harry began once they were settled. I terminated our attorney-client relationship right after I provided you with the divorce decree. I notified you via registered mail. Perhaps you haven't checked your email yet. Nick admitted he hadn't. It's quite a storm, buddy, remarked Harry. Frank added, more like a typhoon. I'm all for it. Plenty of havoc. Harry finished his bourbon and ordered another. Frank began detailing the events. So, on Monday morning, the former Mrs. Buford arrived at her previous residence with her parents. We never got around to removing the external camera. Upon seeing the empty lot, she experienced a complete breakdown, falling to her knees in tears and assuming the fetal position. It culminated in her kicking and screaming like a toddler at the mall. By late afternoon, when a work crew arrived, she had another outburst, despite having raccoon eyes from the beating and a bandage on her broken nose. Harry then took up the narrative. That afternoon, she, along with a couple of attorneys from her prestigious firm, stormed into my humble office in a threatening manner. Since they had no appointment, I kept them waiting for 25 minutes. I ensured my Glock was loaded and placed on my desk, thank goodness for Virginia laws. After the wait, they all yelled at me, discussing urgent motions, bar complaints, and contempt proceedings. I must confess it was hard not to notice the tattoos all over her face, vividly inked in red and blue for visibility. Once I managed to regain focus, Harry continued, I inquired about the exact issue causing their aggression, asking if there were any false statements. They paused, exchanging glances, so I questioned them about the controversy surrounding your ex-wife's alleged infidelity. They all affirmed it. I then played a video I had prepared while they waited, showing Mrs. Buford engaging in bed activity with someone other than her husband in the marital bed. Clearly, they hadn't thoroughly reviewed the entire case file yet. Harry continued. Then they all just appeared perplexed. Linda started screaming that you didn't even give her a chance to explain herself, and I responded, saying you weren't concerned about the reason, you just took action. She regained composure and began arguing that she never consented to you selling the house. She questioned the rationale behind burning her wedding dress, photos, and albums, as they were her personal belongings. I presented her with copies of the powers of attorney, one specifically granting authorization to sell the house. I showed her the property settlement agreement, granting you discretion to dispose of her personal belongings, and reminded her she was fortunate to retain her clothing. I inquired whether she disputed her signature on the documents. While she admitted it was hers, she insisted she hadn't agreed to the contents. Then I questioned if her defense rested on her failure to read what she signed. I prompted her to envision the scrutiny during cross-examination if she challenged anything in court. She fell silent at this point. I also referenced the affidavit she signed, acknowledging her lover's presence upstairs at the time of signing, and asked if this was accurate. She then lost consciousness. Her companions attempted to revive her, but I had already dialed emergency services. Despite their insistence, she refused to accompany them to the hospital. However, she began shouting about tattoos and her boyfriend being assaulted. Harry added, I clarified that these matters were unrelated to you as far as I knew. You were out of town anyway. I suggested that perhaps Dwayne had provoked a husband, either of another woman he was involved with or someone who felt Linda was taking him away. I informed them they could address any potential criminal case with the Fairfax Police Department. Then things took an interesting turn, Harry continued. They persisted in discussing filing a motion for reconsideration and similar actions. That's when I informed them that earlier that morning, I had received an anonymous email containing links to several videos of Linda and Dwayne in your bed, engaging in bed activities before their trip to Paris. The message threatened to distribute the videos to everyone Linda knew, asserting that you, Nick, were unaware and powerless to prevent it. They claimed to be allies, citing past assistance from you, and pledged to shield you. They warned of sending the videos that day if she didn't drop the matter. Are you aware of this? I was out of town, Nick replied. Harry continued. Afterward, they departed. I haven't heard from them since, and there were no incidents at the courthouse. Frank resumed. They likely contacted the police because a couple of detectives arrived. They requested copies of the videos and filed a report. Then their interest waned. Neither Linda nor Dwayne could provide details. They only recalled getting into a taxi at the airport, then waking up in the hospital. Linda discovered herself in a seedy hotel room, having been assaulted before seeking medical attention. The room charges, along with room service and many bar expenses, were billed to her credit card. Nick mentioned that the hotel manager had informed him that New York police had investigated his stay, and his New York acquaintances had been approached. However, they all confirmed his active presence in the city. Word on the street, Harry mentioned, is that your ex is holed up in her parents' basement getting laser tattoo removal. The snag is they charge by the square inch, and she's inked from head to toe. It's bound to rack up tens of thousands of dollars, and yet the marks will linger indefinitely. It's regrettable, Nick remarked. Harry fixed his gaze on Nick. Frank simply pressed his lips together to stifle laughter. What about your paramour? Harry asked. He took quite a beating. He's in for extensive physical therapy. He's suffered some head trauma, multiple concussions. He might struggle to land another paralegal gig. Their firm cut ties with them both. Seems their relationship soured during the trip, and somehow it adversely impacted the entire arbitration. They were ill-prepared, short on documents, unready objections, problematic witnesses. They lost on the merits. The client wasn't pleased. The firm had to make some personnel sacrifices to salvage future work. One of these days, Nick, you'll have to divulge how you handled all this, Frank suggested. Handled what? I'm as innocent as a Boy Scout. Maggie waited in the car as Nick disembarked. I'm a bit peeved no one bothered to inquire if I actually notarized the documents or if she read them before signing. I was prepared to testify that I witnessed her scrutinizing each one, but I couldn't gauge how much time she spent on it. Let's hash this out over dinner. I owe you and your boyfriend for aiding me in regaining my freedom. Maggie turned to him, peering over her sunglasses as Nick backed out of the parking spot. There's no guy, you dummy. Nick braked suddenly, meeting her gaze. Seriously? Absolutely. Now zip it and drive me home so you can commence the rather lengthy and grueling process of making amends. Sure thing. Nick grinned. But first I need to swing by the post office. For what? Sending a card to an old friend, Nick replied, retrieving it from the glove compartment. It bore the Boy Scouts emblem. I'll ask her, does she feel safe now? Safe.